All right, good evening. Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing? Nice to see you all. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name's Lina. I'm with PAL-Awda along with my comrades Fatin and Tova. Just to give you a little bit of background about PAL-Awda. PAL-Awda was established, the New York, New Jersey chapter was established in 2000. And Al-Awda means return. And it refers to the inalienable right to return to all of historic Palestine for every Palestinian refugee and all of their descendants. And it's one of the Thawabit al-Falastiniya. Many of you may have heard of the Thawabit, the four kind of red lines of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, and the right to return is one of them. And the right to return is the framework around which we primarily organize. And that's because we understand Israel to be a settler colonial project, and one whose goal, like all settler colonial projects, is erasure of the native. And so we see return as both a means to the decolonization of Palestine and an end in itself. So in everything that we do, we see the ultimate goal as the right to return to all of historic Palestine, the decolonization of all of the lands of Palestine, not from 1967, but from 1948 and before. And, you know, we're here today in the wake of a ceasefire and in the wake of a success for the Palestinian resistance. And while Israel may have not been successful in settling Gaza, despite their best efforts, despite the might of the most powerful and ruthless empire in history, Israel is rapidly making efforts to expand its settlements in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. And like much of Israel's violence, most of that is orchestrated here in the US. And so PAL-Awda has been, you know, primarily since the genocide began, has been working very hard to identify one of the tentacles of Israeli settler colonialism, which is stolen land sales that happen right here in New York, in New Jersey, in Brooklyn, in our backyard. So we're gonna start off with Tova. Oh, I'm sorry, we're gonna start off with Fatin, who's gonna give us some more context into the land grab in Palestine historically and then to today and settler expansion. And then Tova is gonna talk more about the actual campaign and what these land sales look like. And then I'm gonna do the most boring part, which is tell you why they're illegal, even though laws are racist and tools of the empire.
Thank you, Alina. And let us also begin by acknowledging that we're on Lenape-Hoking land, and that land back in Palestine also means land back here, land back to the indigenous nations here. So without further ado, let's get started. So many of you would already probably know by now a Nakba, and as you can see, this map illustrates what had happened in May 1948. Nakba means catastrophe for those of you who don't know. The red dots illustrate how many villages were destroyed between 1947, so even before the establishment of the Israeli Zionist state, up until May 14th, 1948, which is the date of the Nakba. And then the blue dots illustrate the villages that were destroyed after the Israeli state declared its independence. And as you can see, since July 1949, land captured by the Israeli state is in gray. And of course, as we know, it continues to be an entity that diminishes Palestinian land. And even before a Nakba, oh, I'm clicking. Even before a Nakba, we have since 1918, there were settlements movement of Jewish settlers onto Palestinian land. Of course, we know that there were original Palestinian Jews on the land, but we know that there were migrations that were very clear on settling and occupying Palestinian land by non-Palestinian Jews from as early as 1918. And we have a map of 2017 where we can see, and this is obviously not a very recent map. It's almost, it's now 8 years, almost 10 years old. But we can see how diminished the West Bank is in comparison to 1960. The map illustrates displacement of Palestinians. Over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced as a result of the Nakba. And actually here, if you can't read it, it says that by the time July 1949 came about, 530 villages were destroyed since the establishment of the Israeli state. And these two maps show us a little bit more of what is going on, particularly in the West Bank at this time. The red dots on this side illustrate Israeli settlements and outposts. And over here, the yellow area is occupied East Jerusalem. The West Bank is divided into 3 areas: Area A, Area B, and Area C. The funny thing about Area A is even though it's supposed to be under Palestinian control and Area B is under joint Israeli-Palestinian control, under Area C is solely Israeli control, which is, as you can see, 60% of the West Bank, the majority of it. There's nothing that is solely under the Palestinian control. It is all controlled or occupied by the Israeli government. And even though Area A is supposed to be under the jurisdiction of the Palestinian Authority, we see time after time incursions and raids and continuous occupation of these these lands. And in this map here, we can see the settlement expansion. So the red dots on this map illustrate the settlements and outposts, Israeli settlements and outposts, of course, and the orange or the yellow area is Palestinian population centers. So in the West Bank, it's very clear that there's a lot of settlements among Palestinian lands, and they're very entrenched between villages and cities, to the point where, if you don't know, they're literally, their function is to divide Palestinian land and make Palestinian land inaccessible. Area C, for example, encompasses so much of farmable, if that's a word, Palestinian land. So a lot of Palestinians can access lands that they depend on for farming, agriculture, and a means of living. And in area C is that one, and Area B is, as you can see, it's supposed to be joint jurisdiction, but because of the settlements, it's almost impossible for Palestinians to know which areas they have. It's often feels that it's ambiguous and sort of up to the Israeli military at the time. And that is because settlements continue to expand. Some of them are actually illegal by Israeli law, but they continue to be a thing and they continue to expand until they become something that is more regular, and then they become protected by the Israeli military and the Israeli government. And on the conversation of settlements, it wasn't so long ago that there were settlements in Gaza before the disengagement in 2005. And this map illustrates settlements in 2003. And as you can see, the purple area is what was taken up by Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip. So I wanted to mention this because It is not that long ago that even Gaza was settled by Israeli settlers, and it was thanks to the disengagement that Palestinians in Gaza, even though it was shortly after besieged, that they felt like this was the most free land of all of Palestine because there were no Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip since the 2005 disengagement. And we have recent developments as of now, so that was just a historical context. But just recently, as you can see, that over 825 Palestinians were killed just since October 7th of 2023 and up until January 15th of this year. Over 18,000 settler attacks were recorded in the West Bank between October 7th and December 31st, 2024. Just this past July, so just about half a year ago, 5,300 new homes were approved by the Zionist government in the West Bank to be placed in settlements. 2,000 families were displaced just as of January 22nd, so just yesterday, following a continuous deadly campaign targeted at Jenin, just in Jenin alone. And a newly appointed United Nations Ambassador, Elise Stefanik, who is part of the Trump administration, just confirmed her support and allegiance to Trump, of course, and to the Israeli government, and has confirmed recently that she believes that the Israelis have a biblical right to the West Bank. And that's really important, obviously, because we're talking about recent developments. And home demolitions continue to be a measure of punishing the Palestinian people at their expense, meaning they're often being made to pay for their demolitions of those homes. And oftentimes it is because there are no proper documents by the Israeli government's standards, which we know are very discriminatory and racist towards Palestinian people. They may say that there's no deeds or something or the other. They may just punish a Palestinian family for being associated with someone who they believe was involved in a resistance campaign or a military or a militant action, and they end up often demolishing the family's home of the person that they're associated with. So there's, of course, no due process. It starts often with demolishing the home of somebody that they believed was responsible for something that had happened. And as we will learn, in the meanwhile, settlers from the United States, from Canada, from even South Africa, and many of us know that soon after apartheid ended in South Africa, many colonizers in South Africa ended up going and settling in Palestine as settlers, Zionist settlers, because they wanted to continue living the lives that they were living in apartheid South Africa. Many of those folks get subsidized to be settlers. You know, they get breaks, they get donations, they get help from the government and help from charitable organizations, as we will learn, to be settlers over there. So they're not people who are displaced. They're people who have homes. They're people who have citizenships. And they do the work of being settlers on native Palestinian land in order to expand on this Zionist fantasy for it to flourish into a Jewish home. And I'm now going to give it to Tova, who will take over from here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for coming out in this frigid, cold weather to support and hear about our campaign against stolen land sales. So what I'm going to try to cover here is, number one, a look inside what these settler colonialist genociders are offering at these sales. Who are the co-conspirators and their enablers? What are their objectives? To whom are they selling? And how have we fought them? what else can we do to shut them down? So that's kind of the direction we're going to go in here. So first of all, I know a lot of you have probably been at some of our protests against these stolen land sales, and I know I've heard questions from you saying, well, what goes on inside? Are there actually sales going on inside? So this is a little look at what goes on inside. This picture is from a brochure by, oops, sorry. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, this picture is from a brochure that's published by My Israel Home. There's two organizations that have similar names that sponsor these stolen land sales. So this is My Israel Home, and they're showing off some new development in Givat Hamatos, a settlement that's in East Jerusalem. It was originally set up in 1991 to house Ethiopian Jews and was considered supposedly legal as it was supposed to be a temporary settlement, and the temporary ones were supposed to be legal. So it happens to sit near Route 60, which is a settler-only road. And by settling Givat Hamatos, the colonizers will fill in the gap to Gilo, which, let me show you here. Gilo is over here, and Givat Hamatos is right there. And by settling that, they're trying to fill in the gap between those two towns, and this would allow the light rail to be extended there. And also, there's a checkpoint right here. The checkpoint 300 is right there at that intersection of Hebron Road and Route 60. So up at the top there, you see Beit Safafa. That's still Palestinian land, okay? But this Givat Hamatos is very intrusive in a big settlement that's being built to occupy more Palestinian land. So, so again, they're trying to fill in the gaps between the settlements to make it all Jerusalem. So Gilo, the one I pointed out over here, is actually run by the Jerusalem municipality, and it's not even recognized to be part of the West Bank anymore, although it is. And it would likely be one of the first to be annexed in a so-called peace agreement. Okay. So another one here is Talpiot, again in East Jerusalem. And this top line is from the brochure where they're advertising it to cost from $708,000 up. A new project, retail stores on ground floor, garden apartments, penthouse, and 2 to 4 bedroom apartments. And this town is located northeast of Givat Hamatos, which we just talked about, and it's right along the settler-only Route 60 that we just talked about. It's another densely populated settlement that Zionists are trying to use to fill in the gaps between them to create one contiguous occupied territory. And this quote over here is from the AFSC website, Who Profits. It's a very interesting website you might want to look up, and it's called Financing Land Grabs. And the quote I've taken here is, a foreign company or resident that acquires real estate in a settlement is also entitled to tax breaks and exempt from paying value-added tax, the VAT tax, which stands at 17% in Israel right now. In addition, contractors and business owners in some settlements are exempt from corporate tax for 2 years, and business owners in settlements are also entitled to municipal fee deductions of up to 50% relative to the amount paid by businesses within the Green Line. Okay, and then I have some more notes here at the bottom And these are noted from some people who were inside a webinar by My Israel Home. And they took some important notes for us. And so they said, if you buy an occupied West Bank, there is zero tax, no acquisition tax. And if you make Aliyah within a year, then you can use the Israeli tax rate and the Ola Hadash tax rate. And if you make Aliyah within 2 years of signing the contract, then you can use the discount. And I'm going to ask in the booth there if you can hit that audio for me, please, the audio link. Okay, this is a little lightheaded thing that you're going to see or hear. It's just audio. At the 2-minute, yeah, it's a little tricky. Here we go. Okay. And if you can turn up the volume, possibly.
Kitchen that you could make a meal, or do you have to add the rest of it? Those are questions that need to be addressed. So one of
just one other general. A lot of times I see 5 rooms, but I think
that means 4 bedrooms.
Oh, that's what it means.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Rooms in Israel, when you're counting, they count.
Oh, sorry about that. I just have some friends who are also interested.
5 rooms with 4 bedrooms
Why?
and a living room.
There's a problem with the registration.
A problem with the registration?
Four
Okay,
rooms
I can show you my
with a
ticket.
apartment. Okay, so that's what. Door, and then we just
What was the problem with the registration?
Huh?
What was the problem with the registration?
We're just getting a lot of threats, so we're being very careful, and I cannot verify your
You can't
registration.
verify, I can show you the ticket. I just registered today, is
Is there
that
a person that
why?
can verify for you on the show?
No, I don't think so,
So
I'm
then
not in the
unfortunately,
neighborhood.
I'm not, even for
Ah,
your show,
okay.
I'm sorry.
I see. Have you guys ever considered that Zionism is Avodah Zarah and that you shall not steal? Thou shalt not steal! Zionism is Avodah Zarah! Fuck you, free Palestine! They caught me. Yeah, I was in there for about 5 minutes and then they were like, there's a problem with your registration.
Okay. Way to go.
Maybe you shouldn't have blown up my... It's not, it's...
Okay, thank you. Anyways, sorry, that was March, March of this year, March 28th, the Flatbush sale. And so that was one of our inside folks that unfortunately didn't get in there very long, but she let them know. Okay, next slide. Oops. Okay, so who are the co-conspirators and their enablers? This is kind of sort of hot off the press. Jared Kushner, this is disclosed by a publication called Lever. Just before the ceasefire deal, Trump's son-in-law doubled his stake to 10% in Phoenix Limited, an Israeli finance and insurance firm profiting from expanding the West Bank settlements. So the purchase was made by Kushner's private equity firm, Affinity Partners, and backed for $2 billion from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. So, you know, some deep plots there. So then after the ceasefire deal, so this happened right before the ceasefire deal. After the ceasefire deal, Trump announced that he would lift Biden's sanctions against violent Israeli settlers and has since signed an executive order to that effect. Okay? So we know where this is going, unfortunately. Okay. So then the sponsors of these illegal stolen land sales events include the Israeli real estate firms like Home in Israel and My Israel Home. They're two separate organizations, real estate companies, and Capital Real Estate. They have all sponsored scores of illegal land sales events across the U.S. and Canada. And most of the protests that we have organized have been against one of those three sales events. Then we've got Keller Williams, which had formerly sponsored many events in the U.S. and Canada, but they're an American firm, and they were forced from a lot of pressure to bow to that pressure and pull out of their rotten stakes in these sales. So as far as we know, Keller Williams is no longer doing that, but they were guilty as hell for quite a while doing that. Okay, next one. So what are their objectives? Why are they doing this? Why do they sponsor these sales? So short term, they're want to increase the number of settlements. And they want to fill in the gaps between long established and so-called recognized settlements to create a continuous metropolis of settlements. Because by doing that, they, make it harder and harder to for the Palestinians to be able to take that land back when they have this huge established network of settlements. And then they also want to paint the Palestinian resistance as aggressor terrorists that are the cause of all this. So long term, the complete incorporation of the entire West Bank as part of the Zionist entity is really their objective. And they want to get compliant Arab states to accept the Palestinians as refugees to their lands. And they want to, of course, get international acceptance of this settler colonization as a fait accompli. So that's the short and long-term objectives. So who are they selling to? So there's a few groups of people that they're approaching to sell this land to. One are just outright Jewish supremacists, witnessing the outrageous exclamations of pure unadulterated hatred directed at Palestinians and their supporters at not only our stolen land sale protests, but other counter-protests by Zionists. This seems to be a large and growing population here in the U.S., unfortunately. And then we've got ultra-Orthodox Jews, and so this is a split community as evidenced by our friends, the pro-Palestinian Neturei Karta movement, and we have some of our friends here with us tonight, who state that the political Zionist movement is against Jewish theology, essentially, and of course they have a much longer explanation, which I don't want to speak for them. But unfortunately, they seem to be in the minority, and there are protected ultra-Orthodox communities all over the Zionist entity and in the West Bank settlements. Finally, we've got Jews desiring a second home. And there's a number of secular Jews and other less religious Jews who identify with the so-called cultural concept of an Israeli homeland. This concept is imbued as part of regular teachings at virtually all synagogues in the U.S. Yes, very disgusting. Okay. So how have we fought them? So there's a legal strategy that Lena will cover next, and I'm sure it won't be boring like she suggested. But anyways, I did want to kind of mention some publicity that's important in this campaign that we've had through some friendly journalists, and this is just a small piece that I'm naming here. And can we hit the first link there, how U.S. activists are infiltrating Israeli events? So this is an article by Arvind Dilwar. Yeah, and it's very recently posted in Waging Nonviolence is the site that was posted in. Thank you. Can you do the next one now? This is another article by Arvind Dilwar. And he's been amazing. He's written a number of articles about these stolen lands. These are only 2 of them. And doing a lot of research and documentation on that. And that's really important. Okay, thank you. And then we have, sitting right here, Mimi Rosenberg of Equal Rights and Justice Radio, who is on WBAI.org, 99.5 FM. And she just this morning did an interview with Fatin on our Stolen Land campaign and plugging our event as well. But that's not all. Mimi's at most of the protests all the time, you know, covering this, and that's very important. Okay. So, but what do we do as PAL-Awda? We've been challenging these sales events in the streets along with a whole bunch of you, okay? So PAL-Awda New York, New Jersey, and PAL-Awda Long Island have held protests at numerous stolen land sales events across New York City, New Jersey, and Long Island in the past year and a half. And I also want to plug in New Jersey, where we don't have as many people, we've worked very closely with AMP New Jersey in some of those sales as well. So we are dependent on a large number of primarily Jewish stolen land campaign volunteers to watch out for these sales events, inform us of them, and get registered to attend them. So the registration part is important because as these genocidal land thieves will publish the dates and general areas of these events, but not the specific locations or times, because they're trying to hide in the undercover in the darkness and have these events in synagogues and Jewish schools and things. And so when we're informed of these events and are able to get the locations and times, we organize the protests against them. So again, we also depend on many of our ally organizations to come out and support these protests, as the illegal sales events are usually held in synagogues or private Jewish schools in very Orthodox neighborhoods where there are a lot of Zionists coming out counter-protesting against our events, and they include many violent and even armed genocidal colonizers. So, our strength is in our numbers, and we've been able to get some good numbers thanks to all of your support. So what else can we do to shut these things down, these sales, these illegal land sales? So far, all this stuff that we've talked about is kind of reactive. You know, we find out about a sales event and we react against it. But there's things that we'd like to be able to start doing in a more proactive way to help shut these stolen land sales down too. And one is to go after the banks. There's 3 Israeli banks in with branches in New York. There's some others that are around the country and other places, but right in New York specifically, we've got Bank Hapoalim on 6th Ave, Bank Leumi on 5th Ave, and the Israel Discount Bank on 6th Ave. So those are 3 banks. And they are the ones that provide the loans to allow people in the U.S. to buy this stolen land, okay? So those are a set of targets. Also, there are sites like Eventbrite, interestingly enough, who, you know, when the colonizers set up these stolen land sale events, they use Eventbrite to register people for their event, okay? So Eventbrite is advertising and promoting illegal land sales by doing this. And of course, there's the Zionist newspapers, which publish all kinds of ads for these events all the time. So those are other possible campaigns or ways to go after, because these sales are illegal, as we'll talk about. And so publishing and promoting them is also illegal, right? So anyway, and then there's the opportunity to do campaigns against their event sponsors who have U.S. offices or residence. Most of them are hiding in Israel and don't have U.S. addresses or offices, but we got a couple, and we can go after them. So so that's another one. And then finally, this is a little bit separate but related. We wanted to plug the Not on Our Dime campaign. And if you can push that link up too. So this is an opportunity to, they have a petition drive, and this is an opportunity for people to go against the charitable organizations that are fundraising to support the Israeli military and the violent settlers. So you can look that up as far as Not on Our Dime campaign, and that's something you can individually support as well and help plug it. Okay.
Okay, so beyond the grassroots organizing, which is incredibly important, and it's something that every single one of you can get involved with, we've been working with the PAL Commission on War Crimes, Justice, Reparations, and Return. And we've been serving every single time we find out about one of these events. We do three things. One is we put out a call for a protest. Two, we draft complaint letters that we serve on the Attorney General's office. And three, we draft cease and desist demand letters that we serve directly on the hosts of these sales. And so this is a draft of a complaint that we submitted to Attorney General Letitia James's office. And what we do in the letter, in the complaint, is we do several things. So, and some PAL-Awda members are passing around an FAQ, which just has an overview of our campaign, and then a flyer for a protest coming up this weekend, which I'll talk about next. But so the complaints do a few things. So first, they provide details of the land sales from our investigation. So usually, as Tova said, these land sales are being hosted and organized by one of three real estate companies, and we have already done a lot of research and collected a lot of evidence of the ways that these real estate companies are violating laws, and so we include that in our complaints to the AG's office. We describe and we list the laws that are being violated, so that's like state law, federal law, and international law. So it's state and federal anti-discrimination laws, right? It's just like as if somebody were to go rent an apartment, and on the apartment ad, it explicitly said on the apartment ad, I only rent to Eastern Europeans, for example, right? That's a very clear violation of the law, and that would be shut down immediately. But for some reason, these sales that are being advertised on Eventbrite, some of them have the caption, "Your perfect Anglo neighborhood in Israel," literally. It's allowed to happen, right? There's New York human rights and real estate laws that are also being violated. For any of these real estate organizations or sponsors of the events or hosts of the events that are nonprofits, they're also in violation of some laws that are specific to nonprofits to maintain their 501c3 status. And then there's international laws, including certain conventions that the U.S. is a signatory to, including the Genocide Convention. It's important to note that one of the laws that we cite in these complaints is the order signed by President Biden that instituted sanctions on, quote, persons undermining peace, security, and stability in the West Bank, which, if that was actually being enforced, if only. But you know, and we cite that as a law that's being very clearly violated by these land sales. And obviously, Tova mentioned, but that order has been revoked by President Trump. And so, you know, it's just evidence of how arbitrary and how bullshit all of these laws are, how these laws are just tools for empire. But we use them as a medium only, and we recognize always that grassroots organizing is the most important thing. So, you know, and in our complaints, and by the way, this complaint is a sample. A lot of the specific details about the investigation are redacted, but this sample can be found on the PAL Commission's website. But you know, we don't mince words in the complaint. We specifically and very clearly say that these are settlements that are built on stolen Palestinian land. We name the villages that existed before these settlements were constructed. You know, this specific complaint lists Safa, Bel'ain, Dar Qadis. And we also argue that these land sales are acts of genocide and should be treated as such. Now, does the Attorney General Letitia James care? No. Mostly, we have gotten no response from elected officials. There has been, you know, an investigation opened in New Jersey in response to one of the complaints that we filed, which is positive. But mostly, we are doing this to put pressure on the hosts of these organizers, to the real estate companies. And when we serve cease and desist letters, we tell them all of the laws that they're in violation of, all of the ways, you know, all of the many ways that they could be sued. And we have been successful, you know, besides the New Jersey investigation, we've been able to get many of the sales shut down because the hosts are rightfully intimidated and afraid that we will take legal action against them. Some of them have been converted to you know, Zoom so that they don't have to face the physical, quote unquote, threat of protesters. And most importantly, we make it known that this, you know, that Israeli settler colonialism is being orchestrated here in the US, that it's being funded and supported by the US, by our politicians. So how can all of you get involved? So the one really, you know, there are various ways you can get involved. There's lots of data and research that we are compiling, studying, organizing for the PAL Commission's legal pursuits. For any anti-Zionist Jewish comrades who are here, the only way that we get into these sales is by having anti-Zionist Jews go through an extensive vetting process where they answer questions about who their rabbi is and what shul they're part of and what settlement they would want to live on in Palestine. And, you know, you got to act really scummy for a little while, but it's for a good cause. And, you know, that's how we've gotten evidence of all of this stuff. So we need you. So you can reach out to us. Obviously, if you're interested in this campaign and some of PAL-Awda's other campaigns, and you're interested in you know, becoming a member, please reach out to us, and that's a conversation that we can have. We have, you know, we're here. What's today? Today's Thursday. We're a week, a little bit over a week out from the announcement of a ceasefire, and only a few days out from, you know, implementation of the ceasefire. As Fatin said, Israeli Zionist violence has remained unfettered in the West Bank. Even in Gaza, people have continued to be killed despite the ceasefire. And being Palestinian means you have to hold two things at once often. You have to hold so much rage and so much grief and also so much joy and pride. And we recognize that the ceasefire is a result of the Palestinian resistance. And That is unequivocal. And, you know, on Sunday, as Palestinian prisoners were being released from Israeli dungeons, Palestinians were celebrating, right? Rightfully so. They were celebrating because it was a victory for the resistance. It was a victory for the Palestinian people. And so on Sunday, we want to also hold both of those things, our rage and our grief and also our joy and our pride. And we ask you all to join us in our community in Bay Ridge, where we've been organizing since 2000. And you know, we're gonna have a rally with speakers from our community. We're gonna march, and we'll hopefully all end up together at the PYM vigil, which is also in Bay Ridge later that evening. So it will be a full and hopefully fulfilling day. So, you know, our flyer is being passed out. It's also on our Instagram. Please share it. And then this is our, you know, social media. Please follow us, Instagram, Twitter, Telegram, and follow our various campaigns through our link tree. And last but not least, oh, we don't have the PAL shield. Oh, okay. Last but not least, it didn't make it into our slides, but we also have another initiative called PAL Shield. Some of you may have heard about it, but it's directly relevant to our Stolen Land campaign because it is a campaign to provide defensive material to Palestinians in the West Bank who are actively facing settler violence every single day. So that includes helmets, fire extinguishers, helping them build fences to protect their lands from Israeli settlers who are, you know, supported and escorted by the IOF. So information about PAL Shield can also be found on any of our accounts. Please support that initiative as well. If folks have questions, we'll open it up for questions, but thank you all so much for coming out. We really appreciate it.